All right. Hello and welcome to Office Hours, where we answer questions, give philosophical perspectives, formulate and explore arguments, and deep dive into particular topics of your choice. This is my first Office Hours video, and I have to be honest, I don't think I could have composed a better first question if I had tried. So here we go. Pedro writes, how do you identify what is real or authentic within oneself? And he articulates this at greater length in such so well that I'm going to read the rest of his question here, only cutting out a few sentences for conciseness here. He says, I spent my entire adolescence with depression, but after my 20s I managed to get better by knocking down all the false beliefs and bad advice I heard during my life. The journey in trying to become a real man showed me that my depression did not exist at all, and the suffering I put myself through was due to a lack of knowledge, or at least part of it. Since I was a child, I have liked to read about philosophy, psychology, and religion. I consider myself a very radical person because when I try to experience something, I always give everything I have. I have already gone through a nihilist, a stoic, and a Christian phase, but I currently don't have any defined belief. Given several disappointments due to my own expectations with spirituality, I realize I still feel like approaching something spiritual, but my reason prevents me. Currently, I consider myself a reasonably healthy man. I work, train, and read every day. I do not have any emotional or performance instability. However, I cannot reach my full potential because I don't know where to direct it. What a great sentence. I cannot reach my full potential because I don't know where to direct it. This emptiness is currently filled by focusing on improving the flaws I can identify in myself. Perhaps this is my mind's way of convincing me that by fixing all the flaws, I will be complete. However, I have come to the conclusion that I'm not looking for satisfaction, but some kind of inspiration. I'm not interested in chasing after Bugattis and millions of dollars just to exhaust all my frustration and energy, or to carry the cross I don't know if it's just self-imposed. I am looking for something real. So here goes my question again. How to identify what is real or authentic within oneself or within one's soul? What an incredible question. Again, and so well expounded and articulated. This is how you write good philosophical questions. And truly, this is, I don't want to say the heart of philosophy because there's a lot of different branches to it, but this is really, I think what you're getting at here is kind of where philosophy started, at least with the Socratics forward, which is, how do you live a good life? How do you live a good life? And this is always the question that interested me in philosophy. More so than like political philosophy or stuff like that. And I have to say, it feels like my whole experience in philosophy and what I've been putting out, especially in the last few years, 3 books, has been a build-up to answering this exact question. It feels like we're touching on the identity aspect to Justin, letter to Amway, the spirituality and religion component of holy nihilism, and the problem with disillusionment that is addressed in The Hero and the Man. Disillusionment seems to be a big part of this. How can I still believe in things if I have become disillusioned? Nietzsche has this famous line, when you lose a worldview, you don't just lose belief in that worldview. You lose faith in worldviews more broadly. And it's a common problem. It's one I have experienced myself. And it's something worth taking seriously, and not just shrugging off. So when you ask how do I identify what is real in myself, or what's authentic, what you're asking is what your true identity is. And again, I think it's worth pointing out, I really feel like this sentence, I cannot reach my full potential because I don't know where to direct it. That is that is the key question. That's the heart of it. So Now that I've read the question and complimented it, I suppose I should answer it. I want to start by giving a kind of reframe that I think is helpful to bear in mind when thinking about these subjects. You cannot escape your true nature. If you have a true nature, it will which I believe everyone does. It will emerge, regardless of what you're doing and where you are. In writing, you can usually only write a few paragraphs in affect before your own natural style just sort of emerges. Now, does that mean can you change your natural style over time? Sure, yeah, you can modify it, you can improve it, which every writer should aspire to do. But even as you improve it, you're improving a thing that's already there. You at your best will not be a second-rate version of Cormac McCarthy. It's going to be a first-rate version of your own sound and structure and tempo and everything. And maybe a more interesting example is in chess. Chess is a fun one because it is, as Sam Harris shockingly, correctly pointed out, a game of perfect objectivity. Everyone is trying to find the best move. Especially at higher levels. You're not trying to play with a style, but nevertheless a style emerges. There are certain chess moves that people, higher level players and analysts will look at and they're like, that is a Magnus Carlsen move. Or, more pertinently, that was a Stockfish move. Which is to say, that is a move that is not in the style of any human player. And that's a reliable thing that people can spot. Style emerges in contexts that are supposed to be purely objective. So what is authentic and true in yourself will exist no matter what you do. But when you're looking for authenticity, I think the best way of thinking about authenticity is congruency between your self-perception and observation, what you actually do in the world. And so if you act in a way that is incongruent with your own self-perception, that will create cognitive dissonance, that will create discomfort. It will make you feel inauthentic in some way. And so when you reject nihilism, because it doesn't go anywhere, that rejection reflects, it is an act of authenticity. You're rejecting, I have a self-perception of a man who does things, and so a worldview that gives no cause for action is incongruent with that. When you reject stoicism, and say, no, I believe bad is a real thing. I believe evil is a real thing. Or when I reject Christianity, and you say, no, I don't think everything is just good versus evil, or the world is fallen and man is inherently sinful, or whatnot, or for whatever reason. There are many reasons to accept or reject different worldviews. Those rejections are acts of authenticity. And that doesn't mean you can't come back to it later. Augustine famously, rejected Christianity when he first was introduced to it. He said this is clearly inferior to Homer. It was put off by how unaesthetic it was compared to other texts that he knew. And then later when he was like 34, said, oh, okay, I see the deeper layer here. And I am not a Christian or a Stoic or a nihilist, so I'm not advocating those things. I'm just saying, that rejection of a worldview in its full form or in a shallow first meeting with it is, I think, a good sign. And so, but it leads to this problem of disillusionment. So, my opinion, and this is just my opinion, is that basically the problem with all ideologies, all these worldviews, is that they can be boiled down to being language games. They are linguistic constructs in some important way. And that doesn't mean they're wrong. It doesn't mean they're not helpful. Some of them very much are. I'm a big Homer fan. Homer's Iliad and Odyssey are linguistic constructs, but it doesn't mean that they can't convey something inspiring and motivating, something deep, not just in the outside world, but that touches something within us that we can connect with and build from. But it's not going to be complete. No worldview that is built on language can be complete, because your identity as a human being precedes language. It precedes the description that we use to try to describe the things that exist in the world. So if your true nature precedes language and precedes these worldviews and these labels for spiritual systems and religious orthodoxies that we use to try to guide ourselves towards better lives, and they can be useful tools in that regard, but you are, I think, absolutely correct in rejecting them as complete systems. And so, for that reason, I can't give you a worldview. And I couldn't name a worldview that I, subscribe to in total. I have certain beliefs that sort of help frame things in a heuristic manner. As a very rough example, I would say loosely I kind of consider myself politically libertarian. But at the bedrock level of theory, the libertarian premises don't make any sense. The non-aggression principle is nonsense. There are problems with Ludwig von Mises' praxeology, in my opinion. Everything in all these worldviews actually does break down at their bedrock level, which is one of the reasons nihilism is so attractive to many people who get into philosophy. But again, that doesn't mean you can't use them and employ them in bits. So I can't give you a worldview or a label to help you. But I think I can give you a tool, a linguistic tool, and a tool that comes from Homer, that I have employed in my life and that I think is useful to everyone. And actually, it does exist in Christian, especially Orthodox circles. And this linguistic tool is called noos. Orthodox pronounce it nous for some reason. It's very annoying. It's noos. And it's usually translated as mind, but the way that Dr. Naj, my favorite classicist here, describes it is it's actually something closer to like mental connection. It's about the connections that Odysseus had with Telemachus. The opening lines is, sing of the man of twists and turns who traveled to many cities and saw many populations of men and came to know their minds. That coming to know their minds is the nous that is sort of Odysseus' superpower. In an age of heroes, Odysseus rejected the idealism of the hero. I'm going to try to be immortal in story by sacrificing my life on the bloody battlefield. And said, no, I'm going to try to make it home. I'm trying to reconnect with my homeland, with my wife, with my son, with my father, Laertes. And, the homecoming itself, the nostos, is, according to Doug Frame, etymologically related to nous as well. That mental connection is connected to homecoming, which supposedly goes all the way back to a Proto-Indo-European root, which meant something like a return to light and life, as in a return coming back from the dead, presumably coming back from spiritual death, coming back from depression, perhaps. So, this development of mind that comes from connection with others creates a kind of spiritual identity that can't be named because it's going to be idiosyncratic to you and to the people, to the places, to the gods, perhaps, but if you meet gods, they won't look like how you imagine them, as was the case with Athena. And with memories that no one else will have, or at least not all of them. So, your spirituality means connection with spirits. Spirituality doesn't mean like a lot of millennials and Gen Z and even Gen Xers talk about spirituality as kind of a vibe almost. It's like a social media brand more than it is anything else. But really, it's just it means connection with spirits, and which spirits those are kind of matters. But it's very similar to another term that's a little less branded, and that's character, which literally means branded, but in the sense of having a set personality that doesn't just ebb and flow with the tides. There's a kind of rootedness of personality that is grounded in these networks of connections you have. Some guys will say, oh, the root of the root of character is in pain. And I mean, it's kind of true, but it's like true insofar as, you now have a shared experience with a bunch of other guys who have also experienced a lot of similar kind of pain. So you're going to have a character that resembles other men who have experienced pain, which we generally look up to. But the pain is just a common frame that will give you a known kind of personality, maybe an admirable one. But the true character is that idiosyncratic set personality that comes from the experiences you've had, the relationships you've had. So, with nous as your sort of guiding framework and the mechanism for spirituality of any kind, because how are you going to connect with spirits without mental connection? You have a framework for developing an identity that is not just grounded in linguistic constructions. Although nous is a linguistic tool that can guide you in forging these relationships, the relationships themselves are not nous. Nous is just the descriptive word that was used to describe this thing. You have the framework then to forge an identity that is idiosyncratic and unique to yourself, but that will give you real character and a spiritual identity that is not a linguistic construct, that is real, and is also in conformity with human nature. Humans are social animals. We are pack animals, and we like our tribes. We like our gangs and our families. And, we will always feel lonely without that. But when you look at the people who have lived the best lives, the healthiest lives, the lives that, not only reach into, their 80s, 90s, 100 years old and still, carrying pigs across the farm and chopping wood and, helping out their kids and so forth. These are people who live lives of not just social connection, but intergenerational social connection. These are masters of nous, especially in the so-called blue zones that many people have studied. The famous ones are in Loma Linda, California, Sardinia, Italy, and Okinawa, south of Japan. So the short answer to know how do you find what is real or authentic within oneself, you have to get beyond the linguistic constructs of ideologies and even religions, as useful as those can be. And sometimes mental connection, this kind of building of social networks, happens through those linguistic constructs. Being a part of a church, if you're a Christian, is a fantastic way of developing social ties. And you have to but you can't do that if you don't actually believe in the in the general idea of Christianity, which I don't, so I don't go to church and do that. I have other means of forging those connections, largely through family, and with work, honestly, and in shared explorations with other people who are curious and who like asking these kinds of questions. So I guess if insofar as the question is how to identify what is authentic or real within oneself, you can observe that in yourself, maybe, but it's much easier to go back to my chess metaphor for someone else to notice what's a Magnus Carlsen move than perhaps it would be for Magnus Carlsen to notice what a Magnus Carlsen move is. So, if you want to learn what that looks like, you might need friends and family to help triangulate. What's a me move to make? Because I have the blind spot that is myself, and your friends or your wife can be like, you're a little naive sometimes. You can be a little gullible. That was the criticism of me through much of my life, and remains a criticism of me sometimes. So that can help. But as far as how to find something real and authentic, in that aspirational way, that can help you, choose where to direct your potential. That, I think that a degree of that is just what's going to click with you, in the way that Homer did with me, in the way that the Bible did with some people, in the way that Cormac McCarthy does with some people, in the way that certain great films, Fight Club is famous for this. So we can get role models and aspirational ideals from all kinds of places. Maybe there's a person in your life that you're like, I really look up to that person. I wish I could be that person. But as far as how you actually go about living, that all begins in your immediate surroundings with those connections. And over time, I think remembering the idea of nous, an ideal of a deeply interconnected person who is spiritual in the real world, as well as perhaps with the metaphysical, the spiritual, world of gods and so forth, which usually only happens to people who know how to connect with people in the real world in the first place, is as good of a place to start as any, and as anyone could begin with. Certainly in I think I've gone over 10 minutes at this point, but and to go beyond that is to go spelunking into the 1,000-year-old cave of philosophy and existentialism and ethics and aesthetics that we have all been trying to explore for thousands of years to varying degrees of success. But anyways, I hope that helps. I hope that idea of nous is helpful to you in exploring that realness and authenticity in creating a spiritual identity that is meaningful and real to you. So anyways, thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you guys later.